Hello everyone and welcome to your painting techniques. So these are going to be your watercolor painting techniques. There are 9 of them, so you have some options to choose from. We are going to practice doing all of them today, and they include outline fill in, wet on wet, wet on dry, blending, color mixing, dry brush, crayon resist, splatter, and blotting. It's a bunch of things, but you'll get through them and they'll be very helpful for your artwork. Okay, so for this project, you're going to need your watercolor technique or your watercolor container, a paper towel or something to dry your paintbrush off on, a crayon of any color of your choice, a water cup that's halfway full, and a paintbrush. So so let's go ahead and get started. So before we start on any of these, the first one that we're actually going to start on is this thing over here that's wet on dry. So we actually need to make the dry part, so you're going to paint a wet color on top of a dry color, so that one's going to need some time to dry out. So remember when you were starting with a watercolor set, my recommendation is to put a few dots of water with kind of a wet paintbrush into your watercolor set so that each of them is a little bit activated. You don't have to worry about them starting. I don't actually touch my paints when I do this. I just put a little dot of water in each of them so they are activated and ready to get started. Okay, so with a wet paintbrush, you are gonna swirl your paintbrush around in the color to pick up the actual color. You can see it on the tip of the paintbrush. And then you're just going to kind of lay the paint color down. Remember with a watercolor paint, it's always going to dry a little bit lighter because that water that's in it makes it darker. So paints will always dry lighter, and remember the more water you add, the lighter it gets, the lighter the color gets. Okay, so we're going to leave that one alone, and we'll do that one at the very, very end. So let's start over here with the outline fill in. So anytime you're washing out your water cup or washing out your paintbrush, hold the water cup, swirl it around the bottom, wipe it off on the edge. If it's got too much paint or too much water, just kind of dab it off on the paper towel and you're ready to go. So outline fill-in is very similar to when you did it with coloring. So you literally outline around a shape. I like to use my pinky kind of as a kickstand. It kind of helps me. So I outlined around my shape and then I can go back and fill it in. This is just really helpful for getting clean lines. It's kind of like the basic skill of putting down any color. So there we go. And if I wanted this to be darker, I'd use less water, and then I could go back and make it darker. You can always layer the colors up on top of each other as well. Okay, so wet on wet. Wet on wet means that you are color mixing directly on your paper. So you put down one color, hold your water cup, swirl it around, wipe it off, then get your second color, and you mix them together directly on the paper. So pretty simple, just mixing right on the paper. Color mixing is different than wet on wet, and let me explain that right now. I'm just going to jump around a little bit, I know. So color mixing means that you actually use the lid of your watercolor set and you mix there. So really the main difference is that wet on wet, a lot of times you'll see both of those colors, where color mixing, it'll transform into just one color. So you can use it there. So it just kind of made it a lighter. And anytime that you're using this, the lid of your paint set, anytime that you're done with it, just take your paper towel or whatever you're wiping stuff off with and just wipe that set out. Because when you go to close it, you don't want to accidentally get like more water in here. And this way you have a clean surface to work with when you're done. Okay, so let's get back on track. Let's do some blending. So blending is when you're mixing two colors, again, similar to color mixing, but you will see both of the original colors to start. So again, you start with the first color, kind of lay it down wherever you wanted it to go. That's set. Wipe out your paintbrush, dry it off, pick up your next color. And then I like to turn my paper because I find it easier to do it. Then you start with that second color and you start to bring it up into that first color. And you're just physically mixing those two colors together. If you didn't have enough color to start, enough pigment, just go back and mix it together. If you had too much and you need to add more of that original color, wipe off your paintbrush, get your original color, and come back down and mix them together. The important thing with blending is that you're going from one color to the other color. You should be able to see the original colors and the new color that's mixed in the middle. Dry brush is really great for texture, so I'm skipping to the next one, over color mixing. And that's when you just have like a little bit of paint on your paintbrush and you're using it to basically show texture. Think about wind texture, think about grass. If you're doing the bark on a tree, this is just a very little bit of paint on your paintbrush, just really there for showing texture. All right, so Crayon Resist. This means that you're literally using the crayon to draw a line in your project. So because of the wax that's in a crayon, the water won't mix with it. So it'll leave the shape behind. So I'm going to grab my color, pick it up on my paintbrush, and then put it directly on top. And that is a Crayon Resist. So the crayon resisted the watercolor. Paint splatters are fun, but please be careful with this because they can be very messy. So what I like to do is take my finger and use it kind of as a resting place for my paintbrush, and then you're going to just kind of flick it. So literally paint splatters. This is great for snow, it's great for rain, you know, if you're doing a splash of some kind, really great for that. And then I like to actually mix my colors around. If you don't want it to get in any other areas, my recommendation is to actually take like a sheet of paper and kind of put it over wherever you're gonna do your paint splatting and do it like that so it keeps it out of the areas that you don't want it. So keep it clean. All right, and the last one is blotting. So the blotting one, you need actually like either a tissue or a little piece of paper towel. I'm just gonna pull this off. You're gonna wad up that paper towel and you want the edges. You don't want it to be like a clean, perfect line. You're gonna mix that together. You're gonna take your paint your paint directly onto that paper towel, tissue, toilet paper, whatever you're using, and then you're gonna press it down. And this is gonna give you like cloud, bush, hair, depending on some people's hair, texture, all of that will work. So this is called blotting. So you paint a paper towel and then you press it down and you get a nice texture. Okay, so in review, we did outline fill in, wet on wet, which is where you color mix directly on the paper, wet on dry, we'll come to the back of that in a second, blending, color mixing that you mix over here, dry brush, crayon resist, splatter, and blotting. So wet on dry means that now that there's a dry background color, you actually take a wet color and you put it directly on top. So I'm going to just do a little dry brush action here on top of it, showing you how to get two techniques in one. And just like that, I've done the wet on dry. So it's literally just like overlapping painting. All right, everyone, I hope this was helpful, and I look forward to seeing what you've done. Let me know if you have any questions.